Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a we're beginning with agenda item 5. This is a public hearing on a supplemental appropriation to the county government's FY21 capital budget and amendment to the FY21 to 26 capital improvement program for the Department of Technology Services in the amount of $1,434,000 for county radio replacement and related. A GO committee work session will be scheduled at a later date. Persons wishing to submit additional material for the council's consideration should do so before the close of business on February 9th. Each individual will have 2 minutes to speak. Individuals will be alerted as they approach their 2 minutes and may be disconnected. Also, there may be technical glitches during the public hearing that need to be addressed by our staff, so thanks in advance for your patience. Ms. Kennedy, do we have speakers for this public hearing?
There are no speakers for this public hearing.
Terrific. This hearing is now closed. Agenda item 6 is a public hearing on expedited bill 121, growth and infrastructure policy, renamed expedited development approval excise tax, repealed. This bill would rename the subdivision staging policy as the growth and infrastructure policy. It would repeal the expedited development approval excise tax and generally amend the law governing the county growth and infrastructure policy. Action is scheduled for February 23rd, 2021. Persons wishing to submit additional material for the council's consideration should do so by the close of business on February 16th. Each individual will have 2 minutes to speak. Individuals will be alerted as they approach their 2 minutes and may be disconnected. Ms. Kennedy, do we have speakers for this public hearing?
No speakers for this public hearing.
Terrific. Agenda item 7. This is a public hearing on a special appropriation to the county government's FY21 operating budget, the Children's Opportunity Fund non-departmental account, NDA, in the amount of $3,600,000 for COVID-19 educational assistance and equity hubs, and amendment to FY21 operating budget resolution 19472, section G, FY21, designation of entities for non-competitive contract award status, Greater Washington Community Foundation. Action is scheduled immediately following this public hearing. Ms. Kennedy, do we have any speakers?
We have one speaker for this public hearing, Byron Johns, excuse me. Mr. Johns, you may begin. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, council members. First, I don't think I'll need my 2 minutes. One of the things I've learned over the years is don't keep selling to the sale. So
Totally.
You guys have been just extraordinary supporters. I just want to give you the latest data, and I'm going to tell you a little story that another county in Maryland, who I shall not name, has been asking. So how do you guys do this? Because equity hubs are really something they're puzzled about. They haven't figured it out. They want to know. So let me first tell you, we currently have 1,260 of MCPS students enrolled. 51% are kindergarten through second grade. 39% are third through fifth grade. 10% through eighth grade. So that's quite a change. 80% are Latino or Black, and the rest are made up of other populations in the group. And so it is goes without saying that with your support, we are actually supporting some of the most vulnerable, most hard-hit of our community. These students have struggled with virtual learning. With the support of Montgomery County Public School staff, we have been able to identify and get these kids into an environment that is supportive of them. I did want to just close by saying, so this county that shall not be named asked me how we do this, and I told them what I tell everybody: any 3-year-old with 30 years experience should do this if they have a partner and a leadership group like this county council. So you may be getting called to be recruited to other parts of the state because really it's your leadership that has made this possible. So I want to thank all of you on behalf of the Black and Brown Coalition.
Thank you, Mr. Johns. That wraps up the speakers for this public hearing.
Councilmember Rice.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Johns, and the Children's Opportunity Fund for really creating a great program that you're right, is not only being looked at across the state, but also I want to share with you is being looked at across this nation. In my role on the Human Services and Education Committee for the National Association of Counties, there have been a number of folks who have expressed interest in trying to model a similar program, understanding that our children, many of whom are at promise and who have been compounded with education disparities that existed pre-COVID, certainly have been challenged when it comes to this distance learning model. And so from that perspective, Mr. President, we have before us, I'm not sure if you wanted to close the hearing first, but we do have a recommendation from the Joint Committee.
The hearing is closed. We have a recommendation from the Joint Committee. All those in favor of approving this item, please raise your hand.
Mr. President, I had.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There was one more thing before that, because I just wanted to make sure, and then I'll certainly turn to Councilmember Navarro, but really wanted to say thank you to all of my colleagues who worked very hard and diligently on this from the very beginning, identifying that this was an issue in our community. This is a partnership because what we have recognized is that Montgomery County Public Schools needed to play a role in terms of helping to financially support. So while the total is $3.6 million, it is $1.8 million coming from us and $1.8 million coming from the school system to help support this effort. And it really is tied to the racial equity and social justice lens that Councilmember Navarro led us through last year, and really is a reflection of that great work. Again, we would not have been set up to do this kind of thing if we had not taken the steps beforehand. And really want to give another shout out to the Black and Brown Coalition, Diego Uriburu and Byron Johns for their great work in setting this up. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Diego and Byron. Councilmember Navarro.
President, and thank you, Chairman Rice, for that description. I obviously am very pleased that we have arrived at this moment. We knew that we had to continue to fund this very important component. And I'm also very grateful to folks from the HHS department, the Black and Brown Coalition, of course, Children Opportunity Fund, the Community Foundation, members of staff from our Office of Intergovernmental Relations, MCPS, Department of General Services. Everybody has come together with, of course, Vivian Yao staffing this group to work proactively and looking towards the future and addressing some of the more possibly mid to long-term needs with regards to the equity hubs approach. And that means that if MCPS will be, start bringing back students, for example, where could we expand, or where can, some of these hubs relocate? And so we're looking at all of those issues. And under the leadership of Councilmember Rice and Albornoz in the joint committee session we had this week, we did affirm that we would, as a joint committee, adopt the short-term, mid-term, and long-term recommendations that came out of these groups' deliberations, and I happened to host 2 of those meetings. And so I'm very grateful for that kind of work because it is systemic, it's structural, and once again, it is guided by the racial equity and social justice lens that we all have adopted. So I know that at some point we would want to bring that to the full council. And again, it would become a blueprint for us to continue to strengthen this very important model that, yes, other counties are looking at, and glad to hear also that, on the national level, it's also being looked at as well. I think it's a very promising collaboration. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Councilmember.
And I second the motion.
Okay, we have a committee recommendation and a motion seconded. All those in favor of this appropriation, please raise your hand. Oh.
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that Mr. Rice's, was he making a motion to change the amount from 3.6 to 1.8? I just wanted to double check that was in fact what was happening.
That is correct, reflecting what the school board's decision was back on Thursday to appropriate $1.8 million, correct?
Okay, terrific. Okay.
Okay. All those in favor of that? Yes.
We need to second that motion, or is that understood?
That was clarifying what the original motion was.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Everybody good? Okay. All those in favor of the amended motion, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Great. Okay, now we're on to legislative session day number 4. We have the introduction of Bill 621, Finance Revenue Estimating Group, established. The lead sponsor is Councilmember Friedson. Co-sponsors are Council Members Navarro and Katz. Councilmember Friedson, do you have any comments on this fine piece of legislation?
Yes, thank you. I'll be very brief. This is something that has been discussed in the Government Operations Fiscal Policy Committee over the course of the last 2 years since I have joined it. It's part of a broader effort to look at best practices and best models. This is really modeled after the state's consensus revenue estimating process that I know certain colleagues, including the Council President and Councilmember Rice, are very aware of, where the Treasurer and the Comptroller's Office and the Department of Legislative Services and the Office of Management Budget staff all work together collaboratively to come up with consensus estimates. That is one of the biggest arguments for Maryland's AAA bond rating for the success of that process. This has been discussed, as I mentioned, in committee, and basically would set up a similar dynamic here in the county, where the executive branch staff that's already involved in this process on the front end and then brings in everybody else on the back end once the decisions are already made, would have everybody working collaboratively to have the consensus on the front end before it comes to the council, including the Chief Administrative Officer, the Department of Finance, the budget staff, and then also our Office of Legislative Oversight and Council Central staff would provide quarterly revenue reports. I think this is just part of our moving towards a more sophisticated, more consensus-based and collaborative model, reflecting the $6 billion budget we're now responsible for, and some of the opportunities that we have to improve processes. Appreciate my colleagues on the Government Operations Fiscal Policy Committee for co-sponsoring this, Councilmembers Navarro and Katz, and look forward for us moving forward to this modest but I think important change to provide more consensus, more collaboration, and a better budget forecasting process for the county. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you. Without any further comments, that bill is introduced. We're moving on to 8B, Bill 721, Building Positive Law Enforcement Relationships Within Schools. The lead sponsor is Councilmember Rice. Councilmember Rice wishes to speak on this.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. And I want to apologize to some of my colleagues because there was a little bit of communication gap in terms of getting this out to some folks who were looking to play a role in terms of making sure that this bill addresses all of the concerns that are there. And I promise my colleagues, namely Councilmember Navarro and others, that we will ensure that this bill continues to evolve and is a vehicle in which we can address all of the concerns that we have in our community. Let me just start off by saying this. Look, we have a bill that's before us that was presented by my friend, Councilmember Jawando, that deals with removing school resource officers. And that is one of the decisions that we will have to make. And with Councilmember Reamer, I'm sorry.
Also your friend.
Yes. And the other challenge is whether or not we're going to remove school resource officers or we are going to reimagine the program. And there have been plenty in our community who have said and found themselves on both sides. And so I feel it's responsible for us as members of this council to have vehicles that are prepared for whichever way our school system decides to move forward. This takes and follows President Obama's approach to 21st century policing in really addressing some of the major issues that are out there. And one of the major things, and the reason why this bill is titled the way it is because regardless of what it is that we see with police in our community, there will be police in our community in some form. There needs to be positive relationships between those police officers and our children. We only have to look to Rochester, New York, to see what happens when those relationships are not there, when our police are not properly trained in how to understand, to empathize, to work with especially our youngest of children. And so from this perspective, we've laid out a number of different metrics that we need to have, 14 separate items of training, and I'm open to more. I am really truly looking forward to a public hearing on this matter, to hearing from the public, to hearing from my colleagues about things that we can continue to incorporate in this. This is about enacting change. And so we will have two options. One, to eliminate the program altogether. The other, to truly change the program to really feel as though it protects our children and gives them an opportunity to feel protected. That's not a bad thing, either way. And so I just really want to thank both Councilmember Katz, who's lead sponsor, Councilmember Friedson, who's a co-sponsor, and encourage my colleagues to take a look at this bill. This bill really incorporates a lot of what we have heard from our community, what they would like to see changed about the program, the concerns that they have put forth up to this point about having a resource officer in our schools. We tried to be receptive to all of those comments and points that folks have brought up. And so I'll close there by just saying again, this gives us another option. And so there will be two pathways in which we can move forward. And we hope that we'll hear from our school system in terms of which pathway they prefer to go in. And then we'll have a vehicle either way to make that happen. So with that, I turn it back to you, Mr. President.
Well said. Thank you, Mr. Lead Sponsor. A number of my colleagues want to speak on this. I'll remind everybody what we talked about in the administrative meeting. This is just the bill introduction, and we'll have a vigorous public hearing on this and a committee work session very soon. Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I will be mindful and respect our process. So I want to thank both Councilmember Jawando and Rice as they are addressing, I think, a very important issue. And I know I've been on record saying that it was important for me to hear from the school board, having been a member of the school board. And of course, they did receive the report and they asked for more data and wanted more stakeholder input. And of course, we need to continue to move forward with addressing, in my opinion, two basic issues. One is, of course, the public safety of our students and the community that surrounds them, and then make sure that we are not, in an inadvertent way, contributing to the disproportionality that we know has existed and continues to exist. Many use the term school to prison pipeline. There are a lot of issues that no doubt we have got to address. And so one of the things I actually had hoped is that there would be, through the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force and other stakeholders, that there would be a proposal on the table that would address those issues, kind of like an alternative. I haven't seen that yet, but I have been thinking a lot about this. And I reached out to our county executive just to have a preliminary conversation about this, because it's going to require his department, his administration, the school system, stakeholders, young people to come together. So I will be working on something that I will then share with my colleagues, and it's just literally to think through what an alternative might be. So yes, perhaps reassigning police officers, getting them out of the schools, but reassigning them to beats that are grounded in the community, but then creating those teams with the mental health professionals, with counselors, something that we have discussed here time and time again. Looking at what actually is embedded in the state law. What is the requirement? Because that apparently there are a lot of different interpretations. We need to figure out what that might look like. Defining what kind of issues our school system, our principals, our teachers, et cetera, can request assistance from our police officers, because we should not be using this as some sort of de facto discipline type of mechanism. We should be very specific. We did this when we were looking at our legal defense fund for our immigrants, for example. So defining what those offenses are actually, I think it's something that I'm interested in looking at. And finally making sure that we're not including those disciplinary issues that the schools should own and should work through. Again, as we look at redefining with more capacity with mental health professionals, counselors, BBWs, et cetera. So I will be working to see if we can come up with a model. We'll be obviously working collaboratively with all of you. And hopefully we can, marry all of these efforts in a way that is positive and that it addresses what I believe should be a 21st century public safety and also a 21st century response to disproportionality and racial equity and social justice. Thank you. I know that was a lot, and I apologize if I took too much time and went totally against our stated protocol.
We're all learning the new rules in real time. Councilmember Katz. I think you're muted. Councilmember.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was going to be much quicker than I thought I was going to be because I was muted. I too am a sponsor. I'm pleased to be part of the flexibility on this. I believe that, and Councilmember Rice certainly said it well. I'm not going to repeat that. But this bill allows for flexibility for the Board of Education and for everyone else involved. I look forward to the public hearing. I look forward to the joint committee work of the Education Committee and the Public Safety Committee, both of which will be involved with this. And I sincerely believe that Montgomery County can and should be the leader and ultimately the prototype for how this issue is resolved to the betterment for all involved. So I look forward to hearing from everyone, and hopefully the Board of Education will give us their advice along with that so that we can get to a better place. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Councilmember Giwando.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate, I will be brief and adhere to rules as well. I appreciate the conversation and the effort to try to move this issue forward. I was a little surprised in that, the flexibility that was just discussed already exists for the school board. So I'm not really sure that was it's granting anything new to them in that regard. The training obviously discussed is something that would be a mandate from the council. I was also understanding that some of my colleagues preferred to wait to see what the school board wants to do, but this actually tells them what to do if the program exists. So I was confused about that component as well. But, needless to say, I'm very familiar with what President Obama's task force had proposed. It's important to remember that was almost 6 years ago now. And even at the time, many of the members, it was always if you have those resource officers, and many of the people on that task force didn't think you needed to have them. And we have a lot more data now and know how the disproportionality has played out, particularly here in Montgomery County and across the country. I'm really happy to hear Councilmember Navarro's comments. I think many of us, I've been working as well on alternative proposals. Councilmember Reamer and I put 3 special appropriations, 2 of which have passed. We still need to get the restorative justice one across the finish line. There are other things I think we can do as part of a system that supports our students and reduces the opportunity for them to interact with criminal justice in a system in a negative way. But the facts are clear. When you remove SROs, you have less arrests and you remove disproportionality. And that's where that's happened. You've seen that happen. So I know we'll have a continued discussion. We actually have a public hearing on our bill on Thursday. So looking forward to that and appreciate the opportunity to make a few comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you. I just wanted to make one brief comment. And this is really intended for more of the public audience, but I think there's been a confusion about what Councilmember Giwando and I proposed when we say that we should not have police officers assigned, stationed in the school. What people sometimes hear is we should not have security in schools. And that's not what we're proposing. Our high schools have security staff. They are often loved by the student body. They provide a very supportive role in the community of the school. And I think they really are a model in many ways for how we want a system to work. But we are not proposing to remove security or not have security. We're simply saying we don't need armed police officers, with badges in the school. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, without further ado, that bill is now introduced. Now we have to move on to item 9, the call of bills for final reading. 9A is expedited bill 221, taxation development impact taxes for transportation and public school improvements, amendments, effective date. Mr. Drummer, do you have any comments before we vote? Apparently not. Okay.
Second. Now I do.
Oh, you do?
Good afternoon. I just wanted to point out this is simply changes the effective date of Bill 3820, which was vetoed by the executive. The council enacted it over the veto, which changed the effective date. This moves it back to be consistent with the implementation of the impact tax rate changes, and the utilization premium tax. This bill does require a motion because it went directly to council. It did not go to committee, so it needs a motion to be ready for action.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, the bill's been moved and seconded. I think this is a roll call vote, though.
Yes.
Mr. Glass.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Glass.
Yes.
Mr. Glass votes yes. Mr. Tawando.
Yes.
Mr. Tawando votes yes. Mr. Reamer. Mr. Reamer votes yes. Mr. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Katz votes yes. Mr. Varro.
Yes.
Mr. Varro votes yes. Mr. Rice.
Yes.
Mr. Rice votes yes. Mr. Friedson.
Yes.
Mr. Friedson votes yes. Mr. Albornoz.
Yes.
Mr. Albornoz votes yes. Mr. Hucker.
Yes.
Mr. Hucker votes yes.
Okay. Next, that bill passes. Thank you. Unanimously. Item 9B is expedited bill 3620, forest conservation amendments. The T&E committee recommends approval with amendments. I will add some comments as the chair of the T&E committee. Very happy we're taking a final vote on this bill. Bill 3620 was written, I'll remind you, way back in September and introduced as an expedited bill written by the planning board. The legislation is legally required to conform our existing county law to changes in the state law that were made by the Maryland General Assembly. The bill as presented today complies with new guidelines, but during the T&E work sessions, the committee received recommendations to take the opportunity to strengthen our forest conservation policy. We've heard from advocates. We've heard from others that are concerned about that. We know there's significant interest in updating our law. The committee decided to defer action on those topics until a period where we have a little more time, and in the meantime, advance this expedited bill to, as quickly as possible, conform to the changes in the state law. I'm very personally interested in the concepts of net zero forest loss and look forward to a longer discussion with the advice of staff when we have a little bit more time to consider that without holding up this bill. So with that, do any of my colleagues have anything else to add? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, do you mind calling the roll?
Mr. Glass.
Yes.
Mr. Glass votes yes. Mr. Tawando.
Yes.
Mr. Tawando votes yes. Mr. Reamer.
Yes.
Mr. Reamer votes yes. Mr. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Katz votes yes. Mr. Varro.
Yes.
Mr. Varro votes yes. Mr. Rice.
Yes.
Mr. Rice votes yes. Mr. Friedson.
Yes.
Mr. Friedson votes yes. Mr. Albornoz.
Yes.
Mr. Albornoz votes yes. Mr. Hucker.
Yes.
Mr. Hucker votes yes.
So that bill passes unanimously. Thank you. We are rolling, folks. Okay, in regards to item 9C, our staff advised that we need to postpone action on this item today because while planning staff went through a robust public process to adopt the regulations on this item, they were not published quite in time as required by Method 2. So we'll return to that as quickly as possible. Are there any objections to postponing this item? Seeing none. Okay, a lot of shrugs. Okay, good. We're postponing that item. Now we're moving on to item 10, the briefing by the Office of Legislative Oversight on Report 2021-1, the labor agreements with Montgomery County police officers. Welcome, Ms. Rubin and Mr. Tromka. It's great to have you here. Thanks for all your hard work on this. At this session, just to provide a little context for my colleagues, Mr. Tromka and Ms. Rubin will provide an overview of their report to the council and the public. This is our opportunity to discuss, for them to present the findings and the recommendations and answer any initial comments and questions from council members. But the report will be scheduled for a full discussion soon in a joint committee of the Government Operations Committee and the Public Safety Committee. At that time, we've invited representatives of the Fraternal Order of Police, the County Attorney's Office, and the County Executive's Office to join us at the joint committee for that much more full discussion. With that context, so I don't, if you're looking at the agenda, I don't think we're going to need a long discussion of this today because it's mostly the initial presentation while the discussion will be in the joint committee. Mr. Tromka, do you want to lead us off?
Actually, Ms. Rubin will lead us off.
Ms. Rubin, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to share my screen. We have a PowerPoint to go with today. Can you all see that?
Not yet.
No? Can you see my screen, the shared screen? It is not for some reason. Give me a second, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Oh, I know what's going on.
There you go.
Nice.
Thank you. Can you see that?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So good afternoon, thanks. I'm Leslie Rubin from the Office of Legislative Oversight, and today Aaron Tromka and I are going to talk about OLO Report 2021, Labor Agreements with Montgomery County Police Officers. To prepare this report, we worked with many executive branch staff, and we really appreciate all the time that everyone took to work with us. We also received input from the leadership from the Fraternal Order of Police, or FOP, which is the organization elected by county police officers to represent them in collective bargaining with the county. The council asked OLO to prepare a report that describes the terms and conditions of the county's collective bargaining agreement, or CBA, with county police officers. So that's what we did. Today, I'm going to talk about the legal framework of collective bargaining process between the county and the Fraternal Order of Police, and about the collective bargaining agreement between the parties. And then Aaron is going to talk about difficulties that a third-party reader would have accurately identifying the terms of the agreement. And then Aaron will describe OLO's recommendations to help make the agreement more understandable and accessible to third-party readers going forward. So first, the legal framework. Collective bargaining happens when management and an employee representative come together to negotiate the terms and conditions of employment. In Montgomery County, the council enacted the Police Labor Relations Law in 1982, allowing collective bargaining between the county executive and the elected representative for the officers covered by the law. The council's amended the law many times over the years. Originally, the bargaining unit included non-supervisory staff in the police department, and in 2000, the council amended the law to add sergeants to the bargaining unit. This slide provides examples of topics that are subjects of collective bargaining on the left and those that are not on the right. The county negotiates with the FOP over issues such as salary and wages, benefits, hours and working conditions. Issues such as the budget and mission of the county and department, services offered, and the direction and supervision of employees are referred to as employer rights and are not topics for collective bargaining. And the day-to-day operations of the police department are governed by a variety of laws, agreements, and policies with a hierarchy as to which ones take precedence. So at the top is federal law, followed by state and county law. Next is the collective bargaining agreement and the various other documents that are referred to in the agreement and considered a part of the CBA. And finally, the police department policies that do not conflict with the provisions of the CBA. As I said before, the Police Labor Relations Law excludes certain subjects from collective bargaining. Other state and county laws also limit collective bargaining over certain topics. For example, a state law, the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights, outlines procedures for the discipline of most law enforcement officers in Maryland, and the county must follow the provisions outlined in that law. Some county laws specifically limit or codify collective bargaining over certain issues. For example, the pension benefit levels for police officers are subject to collective bargaining, but the benefits are codified in county law. And if the executive and the FOP agree to change the benefits, the council would have to agree to the changes by amending the law for the changes to take effect. Other county laws, like a 2020 bill governing the use of force by police officers, specifically state that the standards that must be developed by the police chief under the law are not subject to collective bargaining. And while the executive and the FOP bargain together and agree on terms, the council has a role in the process. The Police Labor Relations Law gives the council authority over bargain provisions that require appropriations of funds and ones that require changes to county law. And if the council does not agree to fund a provision in an agreement, the executive and the FOP can renegotiate to see if they can agree to something that the council will fund. But ultimately, if the council will not fund a provision in the contract or does not agree to pass a law required for an agreement to take effect, that provision does not go into effect. And the Police Labor Relations Law requires that the executive annually send the council various things related to the CBA, a written executed agreement, the terms that are required for funding or for change to county law, proposed legislation to implement a CBA, all of the changes from the prior CBA, and all side letters and other documents related to the CBA that are binding on the parties. And now a little bit about the agreement. When OLO began this project in the fall of 2020, the only publicly available document related to the CBA was an FY20 agreement on the county's Office of Labor Relations website that had expired at the end of June 2020, several months prior. We pulled that document and we began reading through it to be able to describe the provision in the contract. That document references many other documents, none of which were previously available to the public, which includes council members and council staff who are working on collective bargaining and public safety issues. These other documents include appendices to the contract, documents called side letters, and memoranda of agreement, or MOAs, all of which supplement the main agreement and are legally considered part of the contract. And we've put an asterisk next to the appendices and MOAs on the slide because we were notified this morning by executive branch staff that most appendices and several MOAs are now viewable by the public on the Office of Labor Relations website in their archives link. So executive branch staff gave OLO access to their digital repository of documents related to the CBA for review, and OLO's summary and the report of the provisions in the agreement include OLO's review of those documents. And I also want to know that executive branch staff reported to OLO they've worked over the past several years to find, identify, and electrically scan all documents that are related to the CBA, including side letters and MOAs that are in the county's possession. However, executive branch staff do report that they may not have copies of all historical documents that are currently modify or have modified the CBA over the years. Many of those documents date back 20 or more years when digital versions of documents were not commonly used. And also of note, we were informed that the parties also do not agree 100% on which side letters and MOAs are part of the current agreement and which are not. And when there is disagreement about whether a specific document applies to the CBA, the disagreement is often settled by an arbitrator through the course of a grievance arbitration. And about a month into our research process, executive branch staff informed OLO that the county and the FOP each had their own version of the primary CBA document and that the two versions were not the same. We were also told by both executive branch and FOP representatives that the county and the FOP had not had a single agreed upon CBA document for well over a decade. So back to the law for a moment, just for a little bit of context. Collective bargaining agreements are contracts, which are agreements between parties that create mutual obligations and they're enforceable by law. And while contracts are most easily understood and interpreted if they're written down, that is not a requirement. Contracts can be made by verbal agreement. OLO notes that despite the state of the documents, the parties report that they work together to implement the collective bargaining agreement on a day-to-day basis, and they use an agreed-upon arbitration process to resolve disagreements when necessary. When OLO found out that the county and the FOP had not had an agreed-upon signed CBA for more than a decade, we were also told that the parties were working diligently to agree on a single document that they both would sign. And we also want to emphasize that we have no reason to believe that FOP members are receiving or have received any compensation or benefits that were not in compliance with county law or council budget decisions. And we also note here that the police labor relations law requires a written agreement signed by the county representatives. And to write this report, OLO had to decide which documents to use to identify the provisions in the CBA. Based on all of the information that we had, we used the FY20 CBA that was available on the Office of the Labor Relations website, the county's repository of appendices, side letters, and MOAs, a May 11th, 2020 memorandum of agreement that included additional modifications agreed to by the county and the FOP, and subsequent council budget decisions this past May regarding FY21 compensation. And before it was publicly released by the council on January 19th, 2021, OLO sent the executive branch and the FOP a draft of this report on December 14th, 2020 for the review, suggested edits, and for comments. And in written comments on the report, the CAO notified OLO on January 9th that the county and the FOP had agreed to a CBA and that a signed copy of it would be available soon. And that signed document was made public on the Office of Labor Relations website on January 20th, 2021.
So the council asked OLO to summarize the key elements of the CBA, and that's what we did. In our report, we grouped the CBA provisions into 12 categories, as seen on this slide. Council members can use the report as a reference guide to look up key provisions by topic, but for today's presentation, we're not going to walk you through the entire CBA. After the presentation, however, we'll be glad to respond to council member questions about any specific CBA provision. Next slide. Thank you. What we'll focus on during the remainder of this presentation is the central finding of our report. That is, difficulties facing third-party readers in trying to learn what the CBA actually requires of the county and of police officers. And when we refer to third-party readers, we mean council members, members of the public, and any other person not directly involved in negotiation of the CBA. Next slide. We'll address 4 types of difficulties for a third-party reader: inconsistency with law and policies, dated material, unclear references, and lack of transparency. Each of these difficulties continues to apply even with the new CBA recently posted online. Next slide. In examining the CBA and its related documents, we found multiple provisions that are inconsistent with existing laws and policies. Here are some examples. The CBA requires officers who elect not to join the FOP to pay a service fee. In 2018, the Supreme Court ruled such provisions unconstitutional. The CBA requires the county to work to deny any Public Information Act requests for data for vehicle and radio GPS locator systems unless a court rules that that data is not confidential. This provision appears inconsistent with both the letter and the spirit of the Maryland Public Information Act. The CBA requires the county to provide health insurance to same-sex domestic partners. County law has prohibited new domestic partner applications since 2016. The CBA's description of police officers' pension contributions, pension benefit levels, and cost of living adjustments each contain text that directly contradicts the county code. And the CBA includes a health insurance premium split that is contrary to longstanding county policy as established in council budget resolutions. Next slide, please. Another area in which the CBA differs from county policy involves the use of tasers, also known as electronic control weapons or ECWs. As Leslie mentioned, the CBA references many supplementary documents. One of those documents is a 2003 Memorandum of Agreement, or MOA, addressing taser use. Among other things, that MOA defines when an officer may use a taser. Now, in 2016, the police department adopted a new policy with a different and more restrictive definition of proper taser use, and you can look at the slide to compare the language between the two policies. But it's important to note that when a county policy differs from the negotiated CBA, the CBA prevails, meaning that the 2003 MOA, not the police department policy, is the controlling document for taser use by FOP members. Next slide. Last year, the police department and the FOP negotiated a new MOA that would have replaced the 2003 MOA, which would have then retired the older but current prevailing language on taser use. However, the 2020 MOA has not gone into effect. A provision in the latest version of the CBA ties the adoption of the new MOA to council approval of FY21 pay increases for FOP members. As you can certainly recall, in response to the economic downturn caused by the pandemic, the council approved a same services FY21 operating budget with no pay increases for any employees. As a result, the standard for taser use in the 2003 MOA remains in effect today. Next slide. And one last example of inconsistency between the CBA and law and policy. Appendix A of the CBA states that employees must not be impaired by or under the influence of alcohol while at work, on county property, or on duty. And then the appendix goes on to define the terms under the influence and impaired. According to Appendix A, under the influence is defined as a 0.10% blood alcohol concentration, or BAC. By comparison, state law defines driving under the influence as a 0.08% BAC. Similarly, the appendix defines impaired as a 0.05% BAC, while the Centers for Disease Control finds that impairment such as some loss of judgment, altered mood, and decline in visual function occurs even at a 0.02% BAC. Next slide. Another difficulty facing a third-party reader is weeding through the many out-of-date provisions in the CBA. This slide offers just a few of the examples of the CBA provisions that are out of date, moot, or overtaken by events. Provisions such as these clutter the document and make it harder for a reader to find current relevant provisions. Next slide. Our report also cites several unclear references in the CBA. For example, Article 69 of the CBA describes pay differentials for flight officers in the MCPD aviation unit. OLO notes that MCPD does not have an aviation unit or any flight officers, nor does it own or deploy any aircraft. As another example, the CBA in multiple places speaks of, quote, retention of previously negotiated benefits without identifying what those benefits are. Provisions such as these make it difficult for a third-party reader to understand what agreement terms are in place and are in effect. Next slide. And finally, we note an overall lack of transparency. As Leslie mentioned, the main CBA document did not appear online until mid-January after our report came out, and more importantly, more than a half year after the start date of the CBA term. Now, as Leslie mentioned, we're pleased to report that of today, the Office of Labor Relations has uploaded the CBA appendices to its webpage. However, many of the side letters and MOAs that supplement the CBA are not available online. As an additional challenge for a third-party reader, many of those supplementary documents are referenced generically in the CBA without any date, document name, or other unique identifier. The CBA also includes many specialized terms, but the document does not include a glossary to assist a third-party reader understand the meaning of those terms. Next slide. As previously mentioned, our report includes a lengthy and detailed summary of the CBA. While we do not offer any recommendations about any specific provisions, council members may wish to review the contents of the CBA as part of its public safety oversight role. However, OLO does recommend a recommendation about the structure of the CBA. Next slide. To improve accessibility of the CBA to third-party readers, OLO recommends amending the county code to require that 1, all provisions in the CBA and related documents be consistent with federal, Maryland, and county laws and with current council-approved collective bargaining and budget resolutions. 2, that all documents that make up the current CBA, including all those supplementary documents, be readily available to third-party readers online. 3, that each supplementary document have a unique name and the CBA reference each supplementary document by name. 4, that the county and the FOP purge outdated and or moot text from the CBA and supplementary documents. And 5, that the county executive annually notify the council of all modifications and amendments to the CBA and its supplementary documents. We're going to conclude our presentation here. We do have additional slides summarizing the CBA provisions as the council asked us to do, and we'd be ready to discuss those if council members have any questions. But with that, we'd say thank you, and we'll turn it back to the council.
Thank you so much. This is a terrific report. We all appreciate all your hard work on it. Council Member Katz, Chair of the Public Safety Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Mr. President. And first of all, let me thank Ms. Rubin and Mr. Tromkin and OLO in general, not just for this report, but for many all of the reports that they give. They always do a good, thorough job. And I know that, as do my colleagues, that this report has and will cause a good discussion. And we're going to have that good discussion at a joint committee meeting for government operations and public safety committees. I have the pleasure of serving on both, so I guess I get to hear it with both ears to see what we have and pay it forward. I believe that during those discussions, and we're going to get into it in depth, it will allow for the public, the Fraternal Order of Police, as well as the council to be clear where we are, what would make it easier for all of us for our path forward. And we will discuss the OLO recommendations and go forward from there. So again, thank you, Ms. Rubin. Thank you, Mr. Trumka. And we look forward to the joint committee discussion when that occurs. Thanks.
Thank you. Council Member Joando.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm glad the chairman of the Public Safety Committee went first. This was an eye-opening report. So as OLO, as always, I really appreciate the great work that Mr. Trumka and Ms. Rubin did and the whole team. We've been talking about, I know for a long time, I've been on the council a little over 2 years, about the importance of transparency and how that is a base critical element for trust and good community police relations. And I'm sure as you were reading, I had heard this before because you briefed me. As you were reading it again, I got shocked a second time at some of the things that are either not available if you're just a regular citizen, or if you're a council member that wanted to know what's in the CBA, you don't know, and what things are being bargained and what aren't. I think this warrants a significant review by the full council. I found out, for example, the other day that the use of force bill we passed is being held up because things that are extraneous to it are trying to be negotiated as part of the update of the use of force policy, which I didn't even know was happening. And so what's being negotiated, what's been agreed to, the process by which it happened, has direct impact on not only the public safety, but their trust and confidence that things are being done appropriately. And it's really not fair on either side for the officers that are bargaining or for the public. And so I would just request that, since I am on neither of those committees, but this is an important issue, if it's possible to do it as full council. I think you have a lot of attendees to the committees, but if we don't schedule any other committees during that time, I'm happy to just join. But I do think this is something I'm going to have a lot of interest in, want to weigh in on as far as amendments and the like. So it might make more sense. I defer to the chairs of the committees, but to do this as full council when we do it, because I think there'll be a lot of interest in this. So appreciate the work and look forward to digging into it more so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you so much. Terrific report. I think this is really a breakthrough for us. And, you know, it's a big moment to finally get this contract into the public domain and to allow the public to see what's there, and for the elected officials of the county to have an appropriate deliberation about those elements. It's been a long time coming. I think it's been sort of well known publicly that I requested this report. I want to just share that I did that really as a vehicle for community advocates who asked me, what is in that contract? How can we find out more about it? And so my colleagues joined in asking for this review, because we do all of these report requests as a body, because I think there's a general concern about what is in the contract and how does it all fit together. So I think OLO did a terrific job. You know, just doing the report actually has resulted in getting a lot of information into the public arena, bringing transparency and sunlight to it. We're certainly not even close to being done with that, but it has started this ball rolling, and I think it's a major victory. I think what you see here is the result of an organization, which is our police department, frankly being under siege for 25 years from a hyper-aggressive legal adversary that uses every means at its disposal to gain control. And, I think it's very reasonable to separate our strong support for our officers who need our support. They need to know that we are there for them. We will equip them, we will train them, we will fund their salaries. At the same time, not having a dynamic where the legal advocacy of that organization takes over the department, which I think has unfortunately happened in so many different ways. And if you saw the letter to the editor from the FOP to the Bethesda Beat over the weekend, I thought it was shocking. They actually said, nowhere in county collective bargaining law does it say that a third party or the county council need to be able to decipher all collective bargaining documents. Put yourself in a mindset to be able to write those words, that the public has no right to know or need to know what is in our governing documents. That is the mindset that we are dealing with, and it is a huge problem. So, we need to tackle the many consequences of this in discipline. We see this playing out. Officers committing egregious offenses, sitting on payroll for year after year after year. And there's legislation that Councilmember Rice and I, co-sponsored by Councilmember Jawando, Councilmember Navarro, have introduced that will address a lot of the root causes of these problems. And I would really like the Council Public Safety Chair Committee to review that legislation. It's been before the Council for months. It has not had a meeting. We need to review that legislation and have a discussion about it. The fact that the use of force policy is now being bargained despite our clear intention is problematic. I wanted to ask if there is a representative of the executive branch on the Zoom with us today.
I don't believe so, council member, because they were asked to come to the joint committee hearing.
Okay, well, I did want to ask about the tasers policy and whether the executive branch agrees that the 2020 taser letter is not currently in effect because the language that OLO cites making it contingent upon the general wage adjustment. Do they agree that that is true? This county, we have had issues with tasers. There have been police-involved deaths with tasers. That there's been a tremendous amount of community concern. And to hold a policy like that hostage to economic concerns that are frankly beyond the control of this county, recession and COVID, is profoundly problematic. So I look forward to taking that one up. I was hoping we would have this discussion today. I agree with Councilmember Jawando. I think we ought to just do it at the full body, but if the Joint Committee wants to proceed expeditiously, that can be fine. But, you know, we got to tackle this. So thank you.
Councilmember Albanose.
Thank you. So I'll start from 30,000 feet. I've said this publicly, I've said this privately. One of the fantastic parts of this job on the legislative branch has been getting to know and working with the OLO team. You guys are such a tremendous asset on so many different levels. And in the 2 years I've been on board, this, I think, is among the more consequential reports that you've produced since I've been on board. And I really just commend you for your work. I look at this through three different lenses, at least three. There's probably more. One is, policy, obviously, and we'll dig much deeper into that as we look at some of those specific line items, such as tasers, such as those other outliers that I think do need and deserve additional attention and conversation and discussion. The second lens is some of this, quite frankly, was just sloppy editing, that had been, crossed over for years. And the fact that nobody caught some of the mistakes that were there that I don't think were there for nefarious reasons calls into question the checks and balances and administrative support that's lent to such a critical process, and that has to be done well and right, because this document opens up legal exposure. And if it's not done well, and if it's not done in a way that's tight, that has significant ramifications. And so I'll be looking at this from an administrative support lens and see what we need to do to ensure that doesn't happen moving forward. But the third lens I'm going to be looking at this from is sort of a systemic issue, and I'll focus on side letters as an example. As a former department head, there are legitimate reasons for side letters, but I'm concerned with not even knowing the volume or number or what's in the side letters that have been discussed here. When I was in the former administration, there was actually an audit done internally regarding the side letters that had been established among the various departments, because there was a feeling it was getting out of control. We had one side letter in my department. The reason that we had established it was to address an emergency situation in which we had two staff members that were working at a recreation center. One of them left to go get dinner, and while the other one was there by himself, a fight broke out in the center, and the staff member tried to break up the fight and ended up being assaulted in the process. And so we established an emergency process by which ensuring that there would be at least two staff members staffing a recreation department at all times that the department was open. That then moved its way into the labor negotiated contract, but the side letter was there on a temporary basis. So I'm curious, as we look at these side letters and others, about potentially systemic issues that we may want to address in some form or fashion to ensure transparency, to ensure that we're not leaning too heavily on tools like that to get around other challenges or other problems, even if they may be expeditious. So, and just to ensure that we maintain those levels of control. So I think that's important. So I think the committee sessions are going to be critically important for us to dive deeper into these issues. And I think we're going to come out better on the other end as a result of these deliberations and discussions that will lead to both policy recommendations on the administrative, the policy within the FOP and our community and the county, and then finally those systemic issues. But once again, very much commend OLO for your work and look forward to the discussions in the committees.
Thank you. Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, first of all, thanks to OLO again
a very important report. We are very fortunate to have this Office of Legislative Oversight that is constantly giving us a much more in-depth examination of many policy issues. And many times as we're doing our work, it's difficult to have these opportunities to go very much in depth and look at historical issues as well. And I think that this report is another example of how important that is. One of the things that struck me about this report is that these practices kind of became compounded through different administrations. And so it's not necessarily new. And I think as Councilmember Albornoz pointed out, in many ways, I think there's a lot of administrative work that needs to take place to clean everything up. I would say that it is very important to have this transparency. I mean, these are taxpayers' dollars. And so I think we all benefit from having the transparency component built into this sort of revamp process. And then, yes, we'll have to have some conversations about the policy issues that have been described. Those are really critical. I am very happy to have the joint committee session. I would be fine if we did it full council. I think at the end of the day, probably we'll end up having everybody at the joint committee session. But however the president wants to proceed with that is fine. But I think it does definitely highlight the need to have these very in-depth examinations of many of these types of practices, procedures that, again, have been in place for such a very long time. And the need for transparency, in my opinion, is one of the most salient and most glaring issues that we have to address. I do want to thank the Labor Relations Office, because I know they've been working with the FOP to correct many of these issues already. They're being proactive in that way. And I hope that when we have the joint session, that we will be able to hear what has been done thus far, and that our staff will help us then understand what are the things that are remaining. So again, thank you to OLO and to the FOP as well for working together in order for us to be able to have this discussion.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm going to try and be brief. So much has already been said. We will not have an Education and Culture Committee at the same time as this meeting happens. So Councilmember Duando, that strikes one. So you're good to go there, because I will plan to attend. Let me just say that this is concerning on a different kind of front for me. And it alludes to what Councilmember Reamer was talking about before, which is that unfortunately, we know that we have some folks, as we do in every single department within government, that don't always do things the way they should and should be held accountable accordingly for what it is that they do. And that being said, unfortunately, if you don't have these things tight that's in this bargaining agreement, it allows for folks to not have the same repercussions that should be there for them as they violate. And that makes it difficult for those officers who are out there each and every day putting their lives on the line to protect the greater community and doing what needs to be done. So I see this as an imperative for us if we are to truly talk about reimagining our police and making sure that our police department is one that works for our community. It's got to be one where it's very clear and delineated as to what the responsibilities and rights of our officers are, and that everyone knows what those are as well, and they're all agreed to. There shouldn't be any gray area here. And so from that perspective, that will make us have a better police force. That will make us have better officers who know exactly what the limits are, what is allowed, what is not allowed, what can be done, what can't be done. All of those things need to be very clear, especially at a time like this. And so it really is a good opportunity, and really just want to thank Ms. Rubin and Mr. Trumka for your great work as always. When you initially told me in this pre-briefing, I fell off of my chair. I've recovered since then, and certainly now understand a little bit more about how some of these things transpired. And thank you, Councilmember Albornoz, for shedding some light in terms of side letters and other kinds of things that are standard operating procedure, but certainly ones in which we need to make sure that the public has a better understanding so that they have a better appreciation of what it is that is going on in terms of the restrictions, rights, and responsibilities of our police department and its officers. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, council member. I don't see any other requests from my colleagues. So Ms. Rubin, Mr. Tromka, thank you so much for all your hard work on this. It's very helpful to all of us. We look forward to further discussion. And I believe with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all for your help today.
Over an hour early, Mr. President.
Wow.